What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to yet another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, and we are less than 2 weeks away from the 2023 NFL Draft in Kansas City, home of the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm getting super excited. Like, we're about to have a bunch of new players on the team here in a couple weeks, and that's always exciting. Like, it's just now hit me that the draft is this close now. But I wanted to make a video today very similar. Well, it's pretty much the same video that I made last year for the 2022 NFL Draft. It was very popular. A lot of you guys liked that video, or I guess, it got a lot of traction. But I made a video called 4 Players That the Kansas City Chiefs Should Stay Away From in the First Round of the NFL Draft. And I wanted to do the same thing this year. I got 4 players in mind that I think the Kansas City Chiefs should absolutely stay away from in the first round of the NFL Draft. So, actually, if you saw the video from last year or remember that, one of the players that I actually had on that list was George Karlaftis, current defensive end for the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I'll admit that I was wrong, I guess, about Karlaftis. Or people will always heckle me about that. Like, oh, remember when you put Karlaftis on that video saying the Chiefs shouldn't draft him? One, I didn't say they shouldn't draft him. I just said they shouldn't take him the first round. I didn't view him as a first-round defensive end. I still really don't. I think he's a solid defensive end 2, not a defensive end 1. But that's okay. That one actually ended up working out. No harm, no foul. I'm happy if I'm wrong if the Chiefs take a player in round 1 that I say they shouldn't take in round 1. If they end up being good, then fine. That's fine with me. But nonetheless, I have a list prepared. Hopefully, right now, the Chiefs don't take anyone that I have on this year's list. And if they do, hopefully that player turns out to be a lot better than I envisioned them becoming on the Chiefs. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the 4 players that I think the Kansas City Chiefs should stay away from in the first round of the NFL Draft. The first player that I think the Kansas City Chiefs should stay away from in the 2023 NFL Draft is Ohio State tackle DeJuan Jones. There are a lot of highly rated tackle prospects that the Kansas City Chiefs could potentially take in round 1 of this year's NFL Draft. But the one that I would be most disappointed in if the Chiefs took him in the first round, at least among the consensus kind of first-round tackles, are guys that we could see go in the first round. Like, obviously, I would be upset if the Chiefs took, like, that Bergeron guy from Syracuse in the first round. Like, I just don't think he's a first-rounder. But, like, of the potential, like, consensus first-round tackles, I would be the least happy with DeJuan Jones, and here's why, because I've noticed a lot of Chiefs fans actually like him. Guys, we just moved on from Orlando Brown. That's exactly what DeJuan Jones is, except he would be at right tackle for the Chiefs. The Chiefs showed when they moved on from Orlando Brown that they wanted to move back to their athletic tackles model that they had with Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. That's why they brought in Jawan Taylor, who is athletic and versatile. Orlando Brown was not that. He got beat around the edge. He can't move. He's not athletic. DeJuan Jones is the same. He's big. He's huge. He's got great size. He's a mauler, but he can't move. He can't move on his feet. He's not what the Chiefs are looking for at tackle. If the Chiefs drafted DeJuan Jones, they would be going in the complete opposite direction that they indicated they were going when they signed Jawan Taylor. They would just be going the other way. You'd be adding yet another offensive lineman to this group that just doesn't fit with the rest. The Chiefs have shown that they want a fully athletic offensive line across the board, and they would not be doing that if they drafted DeJuan Jones. I don't even think DeJuan Jones is a bad player. If the Chiefs drafted him in the later rounds, I could get on with that. But I don't think he's a fit for the Chiefs, and that's why I wouldn't take him in round 1. I would be disappointed if he was the pick if the Chiefs went tackle in round 1. I just think he's too much like what the Chiefs just got rid of in Orlando Brown. They moved off of Orlando Brown for a reason. I don't understand why you would go back to that with DeJuan Jones. You don't need to relapse on athletic tackles, okay? So I'll just leave it at that. The next player that I have on my Kansas City Chiefs do not draft list in the first round, and I think this one will be universally agreed upon, I'm going to go with Alabama running back Jamir Gibbs, who I've actually seen mocked to the Chiefs a couple of times throughout this pre-draft process, and honestly, it has nothing to do with Jamir Gibbs, the actual player. He's an electric running back. He's a home run hitting running back. He was electric at Alabama. There's a lot of things to like about his game, the way he moves. He's very athletic, but this might be a tad bit of a hot take. If the Chiefs had like a true need at running back, I wouldn't even be totally mad about taking Jamir Gibbs in the first round. I'm not a fan of first round running backs. Let me set the record straight there. I'm not a big fan of taking running backs in the first round. I'm not really a fan of taking them in the first couple of rounds. But like if they took Jamir Gibbs and they had like an actual need at running back, which I mean they do, but like it's not like their running back room is completely devoid of any talent. Like they have Isaiah Pacheco, who we think can be a pretty good number one running back next year. If they didn't have Isaiah Pacheco, then yeah, you could sell me on them taking a running back. I think a lot of Chiefs fans are scarred by the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick, and I understand it, but if we're honest with ourselves, the problem wasn't just that the Chiefs took a running back in the first round, but it's that they took one of the worst running backs they could have taken in Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that first round. A lot of running backs that were much better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire went after him in that draft. If the Kansas City Chiefs took Jonathan Taylor instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that draft, a lot of Chiefs fans aren't saying anything about that pick right now. Yeah, you're a little upset because it's just like, why did you need a running back? Or, you didn't need to take a running back there. But if it was Jonathan Taylor and he was a star for the Chiefs, then we wouldn't be nearly as mad about that pick as we are today. Because Jonathan Taylor is, top 5, top 10 running back in the NFL. And I think Jamir Gibbs has similar potential to a guy like Jonathan Taylor. But with that being said, the Chiefs do not need a running back. They don't need one, okay? You don't need to be drafting one in the first round. You don't need to be drafting one in the second round. You don't need to be drafting one in the third round. You can maybe sell me on taking one in the fourth round, okay? Fifth, sixth, seventh, that's all fine. You don't need to be taking a running back in the first round. You don't need to be taking Jamir Gibbs. It's very likely that he's going to be available at 31. And hopefully Brett Veach has learned from his past mistake. You don't need to take a running back in the first round. All right, so this next one, I'm least concerned about the Chiefs actually making this selection. But Will Brinson of CBS Sports did a mock draft and had the Chiefs taking Arkansas linebacker Drew Sanders at the end of the first round. And Drew Sanders, honestly, this isn't even just me saying, the Chiefs shouldn't draft him or he's a bad player or anything. It's more similar to Jamir Gibbs in the fact that there's just not a need for it. So I'm just kind of using Drew Sanders as the poster boy here for who the Chiefs shouldn't draft in the first round. Honestly, linebacker, just why? Why would the Chiefs need to take a linebacker in the first round? Drew Sanders seems to be one of the more realistic options that would be there at the end of the first round. And I guess this mock drafter, for lack of a better term, decided, hey, he's really good. He's still here at 31. Let's just put him on the Chiefs. And that's just uneducated. That's an uneducated take to say that the Chiefs should draft Drew Sanders at pick 31 or any linebacker because they just don't need a linebacker. At least with the Jamir Gibbs pick, if that were to happen, he could be a deadly 1-2 punch with Isaiah Pacheco. With the linebacker room, they already signed Drew Tranquill, which a lot of people were surprised by. But he's going to step in. He's going to play a lot for the Chiefs. He's going to play a lot in their dime defense. You already had Nick Bolton. You already had Willie Gay. You just drafted Leo Chenal last year in the third round. You already have a lot of linebackers, a lot of talented linebackers. Where would Drew Sanders fit in this linebacker rotation? That pick would just make absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. There's other players on this list, players that I've talked about that the Chiefs could draft him and the need would make sense. But the player just doesn't make sense in my eyes. Here, there's no need at all for a linebacker, okay? So Drew Sanders is off my board at 31. I'm sorry. Even if he's best player available, I wouldn't even see where he fits in the next couple of years. And maybe that's a little bit harsh because obviously Willie Gay is coming up on a contract year and stuff like that, and we don't know if the Chiefs want to pay Nick Bolton, but like, still, I just don't understand why you would take a linebacker or Drew Sanders. Now, before I get to the last but not least player that I have on my list of players that the Chiefs should not draft, I will say that among all the possible first-round wide receiver options, I don't think there is one that I would be unhappy with. Like, I made a video about potential receivers that the Chiefs could draft, and like I talked about Jalen Hyatt and the Chiefs drafting him maybe in the first round, and how I actually like Jalen Hyatt. Some people would probably rather see Jalen Hyatt on my do not draft list, but sorry, I like Jalen Hyatt. The first round would be a little bit rich for Jalen Hyatt, but like I'm not going to lose sleep over the Chiefs taking Jalen Hyatt in the first round. Like, I can get with that. There is not many receivers that the Chiefs could take in the first round that I would just go, oh my God, that's a horrible pick. Like Rashee Rice from SMU. I think he's ideally a second rounder, but again, if the Chiefs take him in the first round, I'm not losing sleep over that. The next really big need, though, that the Chiefs have is edge. And that's what this next player is going to be. And I saved this one for last because I got a lot to say about this, and I got a lot to say about this player. And that is Keon White, the edge from Georgia Tech. So this guy there's been a lot of smoke around the Chiefs drafting this guy in the first round. And we heard a few weeks back from somebody, I forget off the top of my head, that the Chiefs really like Keon White. They had a pre-draft visit with him. And he's also been invited to the green room for the NFL draft in Kansas City for day one. And his name stuck out like a sore thumb on the list of players that were invited to the green room for draft night, because the dude is just not a first rounder whatsoever. He's not even a second rounder, I don't think. He's like a day 3 guy. He's a project, and most people would agree with me on that. People that do this draft stuff and know what they're talking about, most of them agree that Keon White is a developmental kind of day 3 prospect. And so him getting invited to the green room on draft night, and the NFL doesn't screw around with these invites to the green room on draft night. Like, these are players that they have a pretty good feeling are going to go early in the draft. Why would they feel like Keon White is going to go early in the draft? That has to mean there's buzz coming from some team that they're going to take Keon White if he's there in the first round. And there's been a lot of smoke around him and the Chiefs, and I'm just really hoping that it is not him, because to me, this would be Brett Veach going backwards. And the last few drafts, Brett Veach has absolutely killed it. It seems like he's finally moved on from his habit of reaching for players or drafting bad players or just, straight up awful picks. Like, there's been even some questionable picks over the last couple of drafts for Brett Veach, but like, most of his picks have been like home runs, like really good picks. It seems like we're past the days of Brett Veach taking players that just no other GM would take at that spot. Keon White would rival Breeland Speaks for Brett Veach's worst draft pick. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he would rival that. And here's why. Keon White, good player at Georgia Tech, good college player, really good frame. Like, he's the type of guy that gets off the bus and you go, wow, that guy looks like he could play in the NFL. But he's extremely raw. Yeah, he's athletic, but he fits that prototypical Spags model, and that's why I'm afraid also the Chiefs could draft him, of a guy that's big, long, stout, doesn't have a lot of bend. He's the same guy they already have on roster in Charles Omenihu and George Karlaftis, but he's also worse and doesn't have nearly as much upside, I don't think. Because here's the other thing about Keon White. He's 24 years old already. That's pretty old for a rookie coming into the NFL. I mean, I'm not saying, it's not like 24-year-olds don't get drafted every year, but most of them do not go in the first round. Like, you just don't draft 24-year-old players in the first round. That just doesn't happen all that much. Not for a defensive end in the end of round 1. So not only is he already 24 years old and older than most prospects, but he's a 24-year-old that also is still a project at the pro level. And that's just not a player that I want to draft. That's not a player that I would touch in round 1, Keon White. Yeah, he's got some explosive athleticism a little bit, but he lacks bend. he's totally raw as a pass rusher. He has like no pass rush moves, no technique. He has no idea what the hell he's doing out there. At Georgia Tech, a lot of his sacks, they were just effort plays, plays where he's just able to overpower the tackle because he is a big and strong dude. But he's not a first-round pick. To me, this would be like a total reach. This would be rivaling Breeland Speaks and Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Brett Veach's worst draft pick. I feel like there's a lot of smoke around the Chiefs drafting him, with him being invited to the green room and just all the things that we've heard between Keon White and the Chiefs. I just don't like the vibes of this. I would love to say that this is a smokescreen and the Chiefs have been putting out that they love this guy and he got invited to the green room for draft night because the Chiefs are going to draft him and then they go in another direction. But the Chiefs aren't the type of organization to screw around with a guy like that and, crush someone's dreams by inviting them to the green room or having them invited to the green room by the NFL and then not pick them and pick somebody else when they told this guy that they might take him if he's there. And that's what I'm afraid has happened with Keon White. I really hope it's not Keon White. And I so badly do not want it to be Keon White. I would be so mad if it was Keon White that even these other players that I've talked about before Keon White that are on this list, like Jamir Gibbs, Drew Sanders, DeJuan Jones. I'm not a fan of taking those guys, but I do not want Keon White so much in the first round that I would jump for joy if it was any of those guys. Yes, they're on my list to not draft in the first round, but I will break that rule if it's just not Keon White. If the alternative is that or Keon White, I'm going with that. That's how much I do not want Keon White in the first round. He is not a first rounder, and this just seems like a guy that is screaming Brett Veach is going to reach for me. I really hope we're past that. I don't want to see that happen. I'm afraid it's going to happen. If I had to, if you put a gun to my head and ask me what I think the Chiefs' first round pick is, I might tell you it's Keon White, and I don't like that. I don't like that I have to say that. I mean, this would be a worse pick than Karlaftis last year because, you guys, you'll heckle me for having Karlaftis on the list last year. But, Karlaftis, I even said, he's a high-floor player. He's going to come in. I think he's going to produce rather immediately. I just don't think he has the highest ceiling. Keon White is nowhere near that. He's definitely not a high-floor player, and I don't even know if he's really that high of a ceiling type of player. So, man, that's a lot. But yeah, I would rather have any of those guys. I would jump for joy if it was DeJuan Jones, just because it's not Keon White. So, yeah, those are my four, though. Those are four players that I think the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely should not draft in round 1 of the 2023 NFL draft. But I want to hear from you guys, though. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? I want to hear from y'all. Is there anyone on your mind that you would just be, horrified if the Chiefs took in round 1? I want to know. Let me know down in the comments. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. Make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!